That'd be good. Because I mean, I walked into your lesson outside of spill, and I even spilled coffee in the middle of your classroom, and the kids still paid attention. That's amazing.
They actually.
It was a great lesson. The kids did great. You're a great teacher.
They said, "Man, that smells really good. The room smells so good now."
That's funny.
I walked in, I'm just like,
All right, it's already good to go. Just say start when you're good to start it, and when you're done, just press stop and give the phone to Nisha.
okay.
I'm
So
gonna disappear.
did it start?
It's live. It's good.
It's live. It's good. Okay. Okay. Just shut that door for me.
Gotcha.
Ms. Campbell, thanks for taking time to meet with me. We don't have a lot of time, so we're gonna kind of have to rush through this. Why don't you set up for me? So the idea here is to go through each of the objectives that are on this rubric, and then we'll go through there. And I'd like for you to kind of really, I'll ask you some questions, and maybe from each section, maybe we can walk away with one or two ideas of maybe areas that you think that we can improve on for next cycle.
Okay.
Okay, but why don't we start off by you setting up the lesson for me? Do you want to start with that?
Sure. So, do you just want me to kind of give a summary of
Yeah.
what it was that we did?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Sorry. A couple days ago. Let me
Yeah,
think back.
I know.
Well, I always start off my class with like 7 to 10 minutes of independent reading time, and so we did that with just whatever book they choose to read, and then we did I think we had a read aloud that day from the book that we were doing, and then our shared reading, it was from the same book, but they have it's actually 3 pieces of paper. I don't know what they had out when you were in here, but two of them are literary logs, and one of them they are keeping track of any instance of trauma that the main character experiences. The other one is, we call it White versus Indian, because the book, our main character is a Native American, and so lives on a reservation and is just kind of dealing with his race and his heritage and all of that. And then the other one is, we just call it a thinking symbol page, and they use it to make inferences, write summaries, to questions, comments, connections. A lot of that, well, we call it the figure 19 stuff, which are the process standards that, it just to keep them, actively thinking about what they're reading. And so I think that's the one, when you were in here, I think that's the one that they were working on.
Yeah, I recall the same.
So, and then after that, what they did, and I know that you didn't get to see that part, I don't think, because I kind of, sometimes I take a little bit of liberty, like with having double block classes. Sometimes I go a little over into the next period before we start our blended learning, where they're on the online program. Sometimes I might go a little bit over, and I did that day. So what they did after that is they did a written discussion, which is where I give them a topic, and the topic was they were supposed to judge our main character because he was pretending to be middle class when he was actually very poor, and they were judging, was it wrong for him to do that, or was it okay to tell those kind of lies? And so each student had their own piece of paper. They wrote their thing down, and then they passed their paper to somebody else, and then they read what the student had written, they responded with their own thoughts, and then they passed it again, and then the papers went back to the original owner, and that was kind of what I was using as their grade, to see if they kind and got what was going on.
You use that to check for understanding. Okay, perfect. Okay, so starting off with this rubric, at the very beginning is the standards and objectives. And so I'm going to go through a couple questions in here.
Sure.
Tell me how you feel you did with respects to this section.
Okay.
Okay, so all learning objectives and state content standards are explicitly communicated.
Well, and you told me to pick out something that I maybe want to focus on. That would probably be one of the things that I want to focus on. Like, I do always tell the kids, I always have a slide, because, my lesson plans are my smart notebook files, and every slide says what we're going to do and what the champs are and all of that. And so I always have a slide right at the beginning, and it says, what are we learning today? And we discuss that every day, but I think that the thing that I don't do so well on is, and I don't know if it's stated, number 5 would probably be the one that I want to work on, is the part about it being referenced throughout the lesson. it's because sometimes I don't think I do a very good job of going back and, you know, I ask them to do these things, and just saying,
Yeah.
remember when we talked about what we were learning
Yeah.
today and it was supposed to be this, do you see how this ties in? I don't think I always do
Well,
a very
that's
good
great.
job of
I'm
that.
glad you're bringing that up because I agree 100%. You clearly knew exactly what standard, there was purpose behind the lesson, and it was set up, and it was totally aligned. So I felt really good about that. It was tight. It was good. But the kids weren't given a chance to even say the standard. And there's something about them using academic language and knowing exactly what standard that they're covering. So maybe having them repeat to you at the beginning of the lesson. We kind of there's different schools of thought on that, and I've been a part of a district that really focused, and it took an entire year to get teachers just to simply post a standard,
Yeah.
the learning objective and the standard, and then also do it in a certain format that they wanted to see, and then to transfer that from the board to getting the kids basically to talk about that standard.
Right.
So maybe for next, we won't go through everything in here, but maybe if we can agree that for next cycle, that would be one idea for you to focus on.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, perfect. And then we can talk about exactly what that would look like.
Okay.
Okay. All right, for number 2 on here, so talk to me. You mentioned you set up the activity and you explained what they were doing. Let's go into that activity a little bit more detail. So number 1, did this activity support the lesson objective?
I think it did.
Yeah. Yeah. So on this rubric, I gave you an E, which is exemplary. I thought it was a perfect activity that totally aligned and supported the learning objective. Number 2, was this activity challenging for students?
Well, in a way, yes. Like, I feel like it's one of those higher level thinking type things. Like, you know, it's higher, like, on the Costas levels of questioning. It's having to make a judgment or things like that. But then I also think that it was kind of easy because middle school children have no problem judging other people. So in a way, it was kind of both.
Well, I agree
They
with
have
that.
they have a hard time. I think they can make the judgment, but they have a hard time backing that judgment up with evidence or reasoning
right.
behind it. And
That's
so I
right.
think that's the part that would have been challenging
How
about.
could you adjust the lesson to make sure that they're held? Each one is because sometimes you'd call on one kid and the judgment or and it would actually be higher level thinking that they'd be using higher level skills. But many kids are just sitting there listening. Is there anything, or maybe that wasn't the purpose of the activity? Is there any way for you to get more kids involved in that?
You know, I do it sometimes, but I have this program that I use on my computer and iPad called Class Dojo, and it's kind of a behavior tracker, but it's also got this thing where you can just press a button and it picks a random student. I do that sometimes. But the technology doesn't always cooperate with me, and it was having issues that day as well.
Sure.
And so, you know, the day that you were in here, you probably noticed that it was that very vocal girl that sits right there.
Right,
She will
right.
just speak up.
Right.
Anytime she has something to say, she
Yeah.
just speaks up. And so, yeah, you were
Yeah.
right. Her voice probably got heard
Yeah.
a lot more than others
And there
that day.
maybe a suggestion about equity sticks or some other way that
in case the technology fails.
well, yeah, and it allows you to be equitable with who you're choosing. It gives everybody a chance to basically get an opportunity and gives you a chance to check for understanding. Either that or something, if not equity sticks, maybe thumbs up or thumbs down or some sort of way to get more kids involved, maybe. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and one of the other things is that I do those papers that they were writing on where they record their thoughts and ideas about
record.
what they're reading. I do take those up, and
You
so the
do.
kids know that I look at those.
Right.
And so, like, I have one girl who, in that class, she was sitting at that front table, and she is just deathly afraid to say anything like out loud in class. I've heard her speak. She'll come and speak to me privately, but she will not say anything in front of the class. And so, like, with her, you know, she
It's a
knows
way
that
to
I
check
check
for
her paper,
understanding
and so
and give her
I do.
feedback.
Yeah, I do use those papers for
Right.
that, but. You know, I think it's important, except for someone who has like severe social anxiety,
Sure.
for the rest of them to
Well,
speak up
and
sometimes.
you could, if you decide to use a system like equity sticks. You know what I'm referring to?
Is it like the popsicle sticks
Yeah, they're
that people
popsicle
use?
sticks,
Yeah.
right? So you could do is just remove her name from there.
Uh-huh.
So when you're randomly selecting, the kids think it's random, but it's really
And they
not
don't-
random.
That's a good
You
idea.
know, or
That's
you
a
add
good
more
idea.
names in there of the kids that you really want to focus on,
Uh-huh.
and that way the odds of calling out the ones that you really want to keep engaged and motivated and
Oh,
checking their learning.
I never thought about that.
just
That's a
a
good
thought.
idea.
All right, so number 3 on here is how about sustained student interactions on this
Mm-hmm.
rubric? How do you feel you did with that, or the activity
I
promoted that?
I would probably say a 2.5 or a 3. Like I feel like the material that I chose, for the most part, generally does a good job of keeping the kids' attention. I mean, you kind of heard a little bit from the book that they were reading. Most of them are pretty
absolutely,
engaged in
totally
it.
relevant.
But I think you sat next to the young gentleman. He's only been in my class for about a week, and I'm having a really hard time I haven't figured him out
Sure,
yet. Figured out
sure.
that what I can do to keep him engaged, and I'm certain, and that the entire time he was probably not doing anything that he was supposed to be doing, except for that one time when he spoke up and made a prediction about something, and was really proud that he was right.
Right.
So I know he's sort of kind of
they
paying
were totally
attention,
engaged. Yeah,
but I
he was
don't.
paying attention.
And then I had, a boy sitting at that
Yeah.
table who had, before you came in, he'd gotten mad at me because I took his cell phone, and so he just laid his head down.
Yeah.
But he was very angry with me for taking his cell phone.
Let me tell you, and I should have set
Uh-huh.
up this entire talk with this, is that what I walked away
Mm-hmm.
from this lesson was that first of all, your lesson was super relevant, right?
Mm-hmm.
The content of what was being discussed was totally, it made sense to it was real
Mm-hmm.
world stuff that they were able to process higher level,
Yeah.
use their higher level thinking, and it was very relevant to them. The kids were engaged. A lot of them were in pairs, a couple of triads, maybe
Mm-hmm.
one quad in the back, a couple kids by themselves. So it's kind of sporadic. It wasn't like everyone was in pairs or everyone was in
Right.
triads. And you probably did that because of the social aspect, right?
Actually, they're all seated according to their Lexile levels
Oh,
in Achieve
okay.
3000, and so it just makes it easier because the second part of class is when I kind of do small group stuff, and
Sure.
I know seems like a really big room, but I didn't feel like I had another space for like yet another table in here, and so
okay.
what I do during that is, if all of my lower level readers are sitting at this table, then I come to this table and I work with this table when we do small group instruction. So sometimes when we do other activities, they may not sit, but I think that day they were all seated at their kind of home groups, which they're grouped by Lexile. And then
Gotcha.
when they do Achieve 3000, which is, everybody's, that way if they need help from somebody at their table, or if I want them to work together, I know that everybody that's seated here has a very similar article because they all read.
So the kids get different articles based on their Lexile levels?
It's all
I
it's
thought
the,
she
it's
was
the
opposite.
same it's the same article,
Same content.
just rewritten at different
Different
Lexile
levels.
levels.
Oh, that's
so
neat,
so it's
yeah.
all the same information. Just one might be
Yeah.
this long and the other one
Yeah.
might be this long, depending on the kid's Lexile. So,
Okay.
but yeah, sorry, that's
No,
kind of off
no,
topic.
I appreciate it. And so one of the things, so I'm also working with Miss Reyes. You guys have been kind enough to kind of let me work with you for a couple weeks. And so her focus is on the standards as well. She felt that she, on her own, said, hey, this is kind of an area I want to kind of learn. And it was good because it was kind of one of the sections that I kind of marked off.
Yeah.
The other part too, and you brought this up right now with the student structured interactions. I think that she brought that up as a second area that she wanted to work on, and I'm gonna toss it out there because she's bringing it up and you brought it up as well. I just wonder if maybe we can have discussions down the road about maybe how you could maybe structure it to where you get them interacting and also using academic language when they're interacting. There's some different thoughts about that. I don't want to take up too much time about that, but that may be or may not be an area that you want to focus on for next time. Okay, so I'll try to get through here quickly.
Okay.
So let's see. Another one on here is. Were kids provided choices, or did you include any multimedia or technology, or was that not really this activity?
That would have happened a little bit later with the
Yeah.
technology. They were doing the
Right.
they get a choice, like they have a checklist of things when we do the blended learning of these are the things that you have to complete
Right.
through the week. I don't care what days you do them on, as long as
Right.
you get them done. If you get them done quickly enough, here are some other choices that you have, and most of them will opt to read their library books, which just warms my heart.
Sure.
But so that would have come during the other period.
Perfect. Okay.
But during that class, I think the only really choices that they were provided is on that thinking symbol page. There were some times that, you know, I stopped and directed them, I want you to make a comment, or I want you to do this certain thing. But they also know that they're responsible for a certain number of thinking symbols on their own with explanations, and it's their choice on how they do
and
that.
speaking of that, I thought you did that really well. You chunked. Your pacing of your reading was really, I thought the pacing was excellent. It gave them time to process and to think about what was happening, but it wasn't too slow for them, so I thought the pacing was right on. They were totally engaged. And also I noticed that you were chunking stuff. So you'd stop, you'd ask questions, and you'd get them to process, and then you'd pick a couple kids to answer, and then you'd have them actually physically write it down. So and sometimes you even started like with a stem, or you kind of helped them, guide them along a little bit. I thought that you did a great job with that. So all right, so we're going to go on to the next section since we're pressed for time. Lesson structure and pacing. Okay, so it kind of leads into that. Do you want to talk about anything on this section? How do you think you did in this section?
I think that pacing is always one of the things that I've been pretty good at. I run a pretty fast-paced classroom. I plan with 2 other people, and we try to do the exact same things on the exact same days, but I usually find myself like outpacing them. I guess the only thing that I worry about sometimes is, you know, maybe I need to slow down a little bit. Like, am I providing them with enough thinking time, enough wait time, like after I ask questions? That I would say that would probably be my biggest weakness as far as pacing, because I feel like I usually kind of go pretty quickly through things.
I thought that this was strong. I mean, I thought, well, you started promptly, the structure was coherent, there was a beginning, middle, and end. The pacing was brisk. You provided for different levels of kids in the room. The routine was seamless. No time was lost during your instruction, and as you were going through your pacing of your material. So I thought this was strong. I mean, there's nothing. I thought they were all 3s. I think obviously you're experienced and you know what you're doing there. So, all right. So the last little section on here is. Let's see, on the questioning. Okay. So tell me, I'll go through a couple of these and then give me your opinion on where you were at. Where you're at on this. Your question level, the type of questions, were they varied and of high quality? Do you feel?
Yeah, I think. You know, I honestly can't remember like a whole lot of the just general knowledge and comprehension questions, because that's not something that I like plan out beforehand. And I'm sure that I ask them. I'm sure that they're there. But, you know, I feel like, you know, that we kind of hovered like during class discussion around those level 2 type questions.
Yeah.
And like we talked about in the pre-conference that, you know, I tried to get this activity where they had to make that judgment on the characters' actions and motivations was, you know, getting closer to that higher level type of questioning.
I felt
and that was their, like, you know, kind of the culminating activity for that lesson.
Okay.
So I could probably do a better job of, you know, asking those higher level questions. I think, though, we were all a little brain dead right after STAR.
Sure. I felt that your questions were varied, and that was really good because no one felt left behind, but yet you kept everybody engaged. And so, you were asking some questions about what's the implication to what they're saying, and even though you didn't use that word implication, you had them thinking about. They were inferring from the passages, and so I felt that that's a higher level. That's higher level Bloom's. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up. The bell just rang?
No, I think I don't have to go until 3:30.
Okay,
So,
5 more minutes.
yes.
Okay. All right. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up because we can all get better in that area, right? No one's perfect there. So maybe that could be an area that we can kind of focus on for next time.
Yeah, and I put that same thing on my PDOS thing
Okay.
that I
All right.
turned in.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, the weight was how about sequence and focus? I felt that the questions were sequenced and focused. I'm not. They weren't really sequenced. You weren't strategic in the way you were asking questions. You didn't ask a lower level question and then
No.
there wasn't a sequence to the questions. You were just sort of asking questions about the characters.
Yeah, if there was
and about the
sequence, it was just
Yeah.
in the order that things happened in
Yeah.
the book.
Yeah.
Because what I did, and I don't know if you saw, like I had these little flags
Yeah.
like sticking out of my book where I had gone through and just put a star on a little flag and stuck it in my book to remind myself that
Sure.
this is what I wanted to ask the questions about this, or the kids a question about this. So
Sure.
that would be the only sequencing really. I didn't
Yeah.
plan out, a level 1 question here, a level 3 question
Right.
here. I didn't really plan it
No.
that way. I just planned it with, this is an interesting piece of figurative
Yeah.
language. Let me come up with a question about
Absolutely.
this. So
Yeah. All right. So what about how about this piece here, number 6? Teacher has an equitable way to select students when you're asking questions.
yeah, I could definitely do better on that, I think.
Okay.
Because I do, and in that class especially, I have a few kids who, like half the class is very vocal and
Yeah.
wants their opinions heard very much. And then I have kids who
Perfect.
don't at all. So that's
Perfect.
definitely something that I like the idea of adding in, like the kids that I would like to answer more questions, of adding their
That way
names
you don't
in
have to
extra
remember
time.
it. Did I already call on this kid? If you already have something going in
Yeah,
planned,
I like
you
that
just
idea.
pull sticks or pull ideas or pull papers, and the kids
Mm-hmm.
think. What I like about that personally is that the kids feel very comfortable. They think it's
Mm-hmm.
random.
Yeah.
They have no idea that you're purposely tossed in someone's name 10 times.
Uh-huh.
So they're gonna get,
Yeah.
heck, my name again. Yeah. So that
Uh-huh.
basically concludes our session. I'm walking away with
Mm-hmm.
two big ideas. First of all, overall, your presence, the setup of the lesson, it was relevant. The standards you're trying to cover
Mm-hmm.
were appropriate. And the pacing of your lesson was good. The activity was relevant. So all those sort of the big idea stuff is I felt was really, really strong with that lesson. So maybe if we can walk away with two ideas for next cycle. The one is to connect the standards, right, so that the kids actually have a chance to verbalize and know exactly what it is that they're learning.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one big takeaway. And the other one is just an equitable way for you to be able to call on kids, maybe.
Yeah, and
Those
that's
two thoughts?
something that I could start that tomorrow, like
Okay.
super easily.
Okay, so standards and so sort of checking for understanding that's equitable. And the word equitable doesn't sound right to me in this case, because it is you're just trying to be intentional about it. Equitable sounds like a word for something else, but so sort of an intentional way to select kids. Awesome. Okay, well, thanks for your time.
No
Hope it
problem.
wasn't too painful.
No, it was not bad at all.
Thank you.
Except for the coffee incident.
That's got to be off tape.
It can be
they,
off
They
tape.
should not know about
No,
that.
they should not know about that. But seriously, my kids were like, "Oh, it smells good in here. Can you get Starbucks every day and just set it in the classroom?"
Oh man, that was embarrassing.
No, they